was the fight of my life. It was the major issue. It had to do with our next-door neighbor, then the most powerful country in the world, and trade, which was absolutely vital to Canada. It was the issue. It was the issue. It was an issue that dominated what turned out to be a sensational election campaign. Well, I read the agreement, and Mr. Mulroney did not read it, and Mr. Crosby, who is Minister of Trade, admitted in the House of Commons that he, the minister, had not read the agreement. It wasn't free trade. It didn't include presidential subsidy. It didn't include presidential discretion. It didn't include a lot of interstate trade within the United States. And that was perfectly clear. We had, after we got the first draft, Senator Lloyd Bentsen, who was the chairman of the United States Senate Committee on Finance and Trade, came up with two of his Democratic colleagues, and accompanied by Senator Mansfield from Missouri, with two other Republicans. So 6 senators came up to meet the Liberal caucus and really the Liberal committee. They'd met the Prime Minister in the morning. They knew I was more fun, so they came to lunch with us. And I said, let's get the business out of the way and we'll have a glass of wine. But Lloyd Bentsen, I put these questions to him: subsidies, presidential discretion, and so on. And then I said, take a look at this binational dispute mechanism. I said, I like the idea of a binational dispute mechanism, because it means we won't have to go to Geneva, Switzerland, on the general agreement on trade and tariffs. We can just do it either in Washington or in Ottawa. I said, that makes a lot of sense. But when I said its jurisdiction over Canadian exports into the United States shall be governed, quote, by United States law as it may be amended from time to time. I said, Senator, that's open-ended. He said, Mr. Turner, your questions have been perfectly legitimate, and this one particularly so. I want to tell you and your colleagues, quite frankly, that the United States Congress will never, I repeat, never, yield its jurisdiction over trade. I said, game over. Turned to my colleagues. And then I turned to Senator Mansfield, his Republican counterpart, and I said, Senator, you've heard my dialogue with your colleague, Senator Bentsen. What do you have in your mind? He said, Mr. Turner, I liked your questions real good, but I liked Senator Bentsen's answers even better. He was speaking not only on behalf of the Democratic majority in the United States Senate, he was speaking on behalf of the entire United States Senate. Game over. Grow up. Well, I was up for it. I was looking forward to it. And I knew I had to get the point across to Canadians that this was fundamental to our standard of living, to the way we lived, to our relationship with the United States, and to our identity as Canadians. And in the last 2.5 minutes of that debate, I really got to Mulroney on it, and that swung it, and I figured we'd done what we had to do. Well, that debate, that was the memorable moment that changed the score in the election, and also the fact that I brought in a whole new generation of young campaigners, and that's what Justin Trudeau's going to have to do again. Well, the debate, as Tom Maxworthy wrote, he was then head of the Democratic Institute at Queen's University, brother of Lloyd Axworthy, who used to be my colleague in the House of Commons. Tom wrote that the last 2.5 minutes of the debate restored the Liberal Party. There's no doubt about it that $20 million invested by various business interests to destroy my character had an effect. And, of course, they weren't limited by the Election Expenses Act. So that did have an effect. And there's no doubt about it that the disunity in our party was not helpful either. Yes, that cost us the election. I mean, $20 million of personal ads is unheard of, unprecedented, and never happened since. I hope it never happens again. Well, it was harmful. I didn't fight back. I concentrated on the election, for God's sake. And it paid off in terms of the election results. But it was very, very harmful to the party. I didn't feel that way. Yeah. I didn't react that way. No, but perhaps because I was concentrating on the issue and concentrating on the people of the country. Yeah. And I found it, for me, a very rewarding experience, although I wasn't ignorant of what was happening around me. Well, it certainly wasn't marked by disrespect.
Very good. So there wasn't, yeah. I mean...
No, as far as I was concerned, it was one of the great moments of my life, and very fundamental for Canadians to analyze where they stood in the world, and particularly with our great neighbor to the south. I don't think it has much at all, but every deal is negotiated on its own merits. The agreement doesn't really bear on it. And there's one issue that's lurks in my background all the time because of my connection with water over the whole of my lifetime. I've canoed every year since I was 7 years old. Water, I think, is a hidden part of that treaty in the minds of Americans. And they're going to be thirsty. And they're going to look for our water. They're already diverting some of our water out of Chicago into the Missouri and into Mississippi. We're going to have to watch that like crazy.